The group was asking if we can double. I said, double. Like do two at a time as opposed to one at a time. So I said, let's see who, there's a critical mass of people who
They don't want to stick around?
Eileen was asking because she has an early, she's leaving tomorrow. He goes to bed early. I was like, I can't control, yeah.
All right. Well, we announced that Haley was going first, but.
All right. I said, first or second.
I'm happy to come up last. Your way, I'll end up walking home. Sure. Unless you rather come in and make an appointment, but if you always want to. So, sure, absolutely. If I can't, it's a question to be better if I answer in person, I'll call you. Can do that. Or just email us, set your phone number in. Depending on the day, Sunday is. Okay.
Oh, so you're gonna live stream this? That's what's going on?
Well, it was, it won't be great because when there's conversation and discussion,
You want,
that
I
doesn't
can't
go
hear,
over.
you can
Right.
only hear whoever's right up there.
Evan, Nicole,
I was thinking you were willing to go up and give that cat a shot. So I could live it when I got home. I could just tune right in.
whatever, I mean, you'll hear what you hear.
Well, I
That'd be great,
but
right?
that's, well, I came to. These books are a little confusing. I guess we'll get used to it.
Oh, look, I mean,
They're nice, but it's nice because you only have to have one book. It's got everything in it.
well, no, yeah, but still need weekday books.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What,
In fact,
for the,
new weekday books are for shipping.
what, for the morning service or?
Well,
is
for
everything?
all weekday, I mean, yes, you could, but in the old Cedar, we also had, weekday afternoon, weekday evening. But, you still need to have a weekday support, so.
Oh, they're blue.
Yeah, we're just, the Shabbat was blue.
Right.
The weekday was red, so now the Shabbat is red. And they don't make them like they used to.
Tissue paper. By the way, I haven't asked you how the boys doing.
As far as we know, they're doing okay.
The whole
They're all in their own places.
Becky, one of them has their own place?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, after 2 years, I think they were.
Tired of living with each other. Well, it wasn't 2 years because they lived their whole lives practically with one another. So.
Right, but 2 years, all three of them, in a two-bedroom.
Right.
And, Elliot and we're up there 5 years together.
Wow.
But Elliot is still with Avikai temporarily.
Can we put a chair?
Yeah, just grab it.
So how is their show business?
No.
Still.
Elior's taking a break. He's trying to make money. He's working for a rideshare company. It's a subsidiary of hers. He likes it because he's always loved driving. He likes talking to
Yeah, he was the only one that had driver's license, wasn't he?
No, we tomorrow.
Oh, he's smart.
And in fact, he tomorrow his car.
Oh.
Just got rid of the van. Pay off what was left in the van and then just keep it. Right, but Itamar is.
Itamar's not the one doing rideshare.
He does
Pretty.
food delivery.
That's pretty
Uber
steady.
Eats. He has 2 jobs.
You're only like cutting your So.
Sorry for
They call them
That purple part is new. They did a nice job on the renovation here.
He has his own
Took
bed.
out all the gray stuff, yeah.
They share living room station near
What?
I've seen
Cinnabar.
that.
He has his own door. It's its own, but it's a nice building.
Face the earth.
So the fact that he's sharing an apartment with several other people gave him more financial
You have, you're dating in the afternoon or something? That's keeping you busy? I've seen that, where they have their own bedrooms and, after work, they have Monday to Friday, right? Yeah. I'm gonna go home.
Well, we'll catch up real shortly.
No, wait, I'm here Tuesday.
So I would say we start by
Saturday morning, you're here, you go to morning service. And then what are you doing on Sunday? What are you doing on Sunday?
And I have handouts, but it's in the book. So.
What do you teach?
all the same. The other advantage of the book is if you want to reference something else.
Right.
Otherwise,
You want to like walk?
I've submitted that. Honestly, when we have somebody brings, whatever for a morning, item, yeah, it's,
So September.
I think for the sake of learning, you're gonna have a lot of
You like to do it over the summer when you're, yeah. Well, tell them, put you on the waiting list, so if anything, leaves earlier than you. My favorite, where are you looking?
There's actually something. Figure out something right over this area.
Did you ever use your VA? Okay. Yeah, sure, of course. Makes sense.
Hey, Jeff.
So listen, I will forgive you for that. Text me once in a while. It'd just be nice to hear from you. That's all. As I said, I thought you'd drop off every time.
Here.
All right, you gonna take one and
It's a single page, front and back.
How are you, stranger? Where have you been?
Safari and Google.
I have been using it for probably a year and a half now. It's much easier than building in Safari.
Yeah.
Or at least it is easier to then print than building in Safari. It's easier if you're going to use it as a physical copy.
Yes. That was, I just have to, get used to that. Yeah. Took me a little bit to figure out how to change the hand.
Yeah. But if you choose the Yud Kuf, it also changes Eloheinu to Elokeinu. I had to tell a friend of mine was very excited by that because he will not use he will not print something with Eloheinu and has had to go back in manually and change every hey to a kuf. But it will actually change Eloheinu to Elokeinu also.
Will it add a dash to L?
I don't know. I've never tried.
Dash to H dash Shem.
I just use the hay with the cheek shock, or I'll use the yud yud. I
really don't worry about it.
Right. I only worry about yud hey vav hey. So.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
What? What happened,
I don't
Georgia?
want to see two of you. I wear these glasses. But I can't read.
Oh, yeah.
I won't be insulted if you're not looking at me.
Okay, so then I'll go back to my reading glasses.
Daughter.
So if I look a little see, I'll see one fly on it. And the cashier said, I said, hi, on your thing. And the girl said, oh, is that pie? And I said, no, but close.
I remember this is the first time I went. So you know what
I know. It's trying to, that's so funny.
That's when I learned it.
So it's really redundant, trying to.
Sorry. There are 50 copies. There are definitely not 50 people here. So. Okay. All right. So to start out,
Hi, Rabbi.
hi. As long as you're heckling each other and not me, but maybe not. This is looking at Tanakh in prayer, in liturgy, and also prayer in Tanakh. I'm going to start with where did this come from? About 5 years ago, I started davening out of 2 different sidurim. I used the Bani Tefillati Israeli Masorti Sidur and the Koren, which is an Orthodox Israeli publisher, all Hebrew Sidur. Both of those sidurim, in a way that the Sim Shalom and Lev Shalem don't, have citations for the source of every single quote in liturgy in the margins. And it is remarkable how many pieces of the liturgy that we know as liturgy actually come from Tanakh. Some of them are obvious. We know Psalms. Most of Psukei de Zimra is Psalms in their entirety, same with Kabbalah Shabbat. But of importance, the words Psukei de Zimra is verses of song. So already, we have some context just in the name of that portion of the service that we're probably starting out with pieces that exist outside of the liturgy itself and are in Tanakh. And if you have a Siddur with all of those citations, you can see just how many of those things are from Tanakh. Occasionally, some of them are Mishnaic or Talmudic. Mostly, they're Ketuvim at that point, with some prophets thrown in, some Torah. And the arguably most famous pieces of liturgy are biblical quotations. I think we're aware of Shema as a biblical quotation. All 3 paragraphs are biblical quotations. But so is Vayehi bin Soah Ha'aron. We'll read it in a couple of weeks. So is Eitz Chaim Hi L'Machazikim Ba. So is Hashivenu Adonai Lecha V'Nashuva. A lot of Torah service. Mizmor LeDavid is another psalm. Micha Mocha. In Psukei de Zimra, you've got Az Yashir Moshe. We could sing the whole song. We could keep going. I'm sure we can keep going, finding things that are come from liturgy, from Tanakh, come from the Bible. There are also a few that are less well-known, that are really amalgamation of a bunch of verses from various places. Uval Etzion Goel, which comes towards the end of Shacharit, and in Mariv in places. The additional blessing that's added after Hashkivenu on weekday Mariv has a number of verses in it. Kedusha de Sidra, which shows up on Shabbat Mincha and in Shacharit also. And one we'll look at later, the paragraph before Ashrei in Psukei de Zimra, which starts with Yehi Chavod Adonai, which is the second sheet on the second source on the sheet. We will get that one we're going to talk about in specifics, but first, the vast majority of the verses that we have in liturgy that come from Tanakh are not Tanakh moments of prayer. If we think about what moments that we know, stories we know from Tanakh across all of the books that are moments of prayer, what are moments that we think of?
Crossing the sea, Miriam.
Right, so Moses and Miriam singing as we cross the sea is a moment of prayer, praise and song as prayer. Haftarah on, it's one of the high holidays. Chana. Hannah praying in the temple for a child. We also have later on Moses praying to God for mercy for the people because they've been complaining a whole lot and God wants to wipe them out and start over, and Moses prays on behalf of the people, says no. And again, Moses prays on behalf of the Israelites for the sea to even cross, even before he's singing. And when Miriam is stricken with tzarat, El na refana la, please God heal her, is a moment of prayer in Tanakh. Even when we do Mishaberach for the sick, that verse does not get used. Sometimes used in song and in healing circles, but in traditional liturgy, that verse doesn't get used. There is one moment, it's in Psukei de Zimra, because when you're looking for Tanakh in prayer, it's easy to find. That's the best place. Our first paragraph on the source sheet is a moment of prayer happening in the Torah that actually does end up in liturgy. This is the first of the biblical passages right before we sing Az Yashir Moshe in the mornings. Ve'varech David et Adonai le'nei kol kahal vayomer David Baruch atah Adonai Elohei Yisrael Avinu me'olam ve'ad olam. So this section starts, David blessed God in front of all of the assemblage community. And David said, "Blessed are you, Eternal One," is how this translates Adonai. "Our God, God of Israel, our Father, from eternity to eternity." And it continues, "Yours, God, are greatness, might, splendor, triumph, majesty. All that is in heaven and earth to you belongs, eternal ones belong kingship, preeminence above all. Riches and honor are yours to dispense. You have dominion over all. With you are strength and might, and it is in your power to make everyone great and strong. Now, God, we praise you and extol your glorious name." Does anyone have any feeling of why this prayer is the one that is not only added to liturgy, it's added to liturgy for every single day of the year? Lily?
From front of an assemblage, and if you haven't been in, it's doing the assemblage again, I guess. I could have said that in a much more intelligent way. Something comes to mind.
So this is a moment of David praying not for himself or for a specific person, but praising God in front of the entire community, the entire people.
And
Yeah.
to give an idea of what God is and can do, and the scope, majesty.
So really, this gives a sense of God's strength and what God's abilities are, what our relationship is to God, and why we worship God in particular, maybe. Irani?
There are also multiple prayer themes just in these few verses. Gratitude, praise, your name, dominion. These are things that are normally spread out over a lot of prayers, and they're all right here.
Okay. So when we pray, we have prayers of gratitude. We have prayers that praise God, that talk about God's kingship, that talk about God as our God, as Redeemer, all of these things. And these are all just in one paragraph, really quickly, concisely. Okay. Any other thoughts on this one?
Well, this is a contrarian thought, but
Okay.
in a way,
I like contrarian thoughts.
it's like a humble brag. You know, he's saying all the greatness comes from God and all the power and all these, you know, the glory and all that stuff. But he's clearly the one enjoying all of that at the moment. So he's saying, well, yeah,
Okay.
God gives those things, and it just looks like he gave them to me.
Okay. So maybe it's selfish, maybe it's humble brag. But it could also be saying this is this is what God does, and God could do this for everyone. Mark?
That was my reaction too. Is a lot of the Psalms have a thing about starting out, I'm in distress, and then God bringing healing. So you don't get the distress here. But David was the source of, and he had relations that he should not have had, and a kid, and he wanted the kids for, it's David had to call upon God for healing and help and saving, and you don't get any of that in this.
Right, we don't get the moment where David struggles in this passage. Yeah. Ronnie?
I'll take the other side here, which is that part of the beauty of this is seeing the king be humble. So from others seeing it, that's quite powerful for the king to say, oh, there's a greater being.
Even the greatest of us.
Right.
There is a being greater and more powerful than he. I saw Marcus.
Yeah, you see, if I remember correctly, this comes like right before Ajashir, and so as preparing, talk about, this is kind of general, you're awesome in all kinds of ways, and I'll be thinking about this one time at the city. It just seems like a very good preparation for
Okay, so maybe this is preparation for the passages that come after, which is, yes, Song of the Sea, but before that is also the passage about God's promise to Abraham and bringing Avram to Canaan and promising him the land of all of these peoples. So this is a preface to the pieces in there that focus on God's relationship with Jewish history. Yeah, Roy.
It was all about history, and I'm just going to note that, I mean, this paragraph is coming from Chronicles, not from the book of Kings.
This is from Chronicles, not Kings.
And Chronicles takes a little different view of
There are Chronicles is in Ketuvim, in writings, as opposed to in Nevi'im and prophets, where Kings is. And Kings and Chronicles tell similar but not the same stories when they tell the same stories, and they include things that the other excludes. I don't remember offhand if there's a parallel passage of this in Kings. I don't think so. Neither does Rabbi Lubliner, so we're going to guess that there isn't one. If neither of us can think of it, then my guess is it's not there.
And it would be Shmuel back.
Yeah, it would be Shmuel. David is mostly before Kings, but right. Yeah, Wendy.
One of the things that I teach the beginners for kids is that you've got Torah and half Torah. When you're chanting Torah, it's with a happy voice because you're so happy with Torah. Half Torah, mostly the Nevi'im, and they're unhappy because this is a point in history where Jews are not being allowed to read Torah. It's almost as though God has anticipated there are messages Jews are not going to be able to learn about, and so we need to reinforce what we're all about, and this is the scaffolding, and it's showing up in books that the rabbis don't really seem to know very much about, so they don't outlaw them instead of get their outlawing Torah. So God is anticipating. You're still going to learn the lessons, how to behave, how to be good people. It's just going to be in a different way that they don't know about.
So maybe not necessarily difference of Torah and Haftarah, but I hope this doesn't come as a shock. Liturgy was instituted by the rabbis. The need for prayer came from God. The liturgy itself comes from the rabbis, and the rabbis are living in a world where they are not the power that be. Within a chunk of the Jewish community, they are. But the Jews are not powerful. And the original rabbis don't even entirely have influence over all of the Jewish people. So maybe this passage is instituted in daily prayer to give some credence to the need to do this. Hey, look, David did this. David did this, even David, the strongest of everybody. Even he prayed and praised. And there's an importance in prayer, and the fact that David is doing this is a reminder. And the fact that David very concisely encompassed all of the things that we want to have in our prayer is kind of impressive. Which, yeah.
Just want a yes, but on the
Okay.
rabbis creating
A yes, but.
liturgy, because there, you have things about what the priest recited.
Yes.
The rabbis built on
The temple liturgy, the Beit HaMikdash sacrificial liturgy, absolutely is Torah. I'll clarify. Temple liturgy is absolutely Torah. The Siddur liturgy is the rabbis, is later. I want to move to the next passage. This one you had to get, unless I wanted to go through and find every single one from its separate source, which I could have done. The only way to get this in this form is in the Siddur. This is the paragraph that comes immediately before Ashrei and is an amalgamation of 18 verses, mostly from Psalms, but a couple from Chronicles and Proverbs, that each one mentions God's name at least once and are each in some way parallel to the 18 blessings of the weekday Amidah, the 18 original ones. So, what page in the Siddur? In this Siddur, it is page 100, that's by Varsavid, so it's a little earlier than that. Ashrei, no. 135. 135. Yes, this one actually gives the sources, which is wonderful, and the exact verse numbers, which my other Siddurim just tell you the chapter. So having the exact verses is nice. So this one, I'm just going to read the English, and I'll use the Siddur. May the glory of God endure forever. May God rejoice in all that God created. May the name of Adonai be blessed now and forever. From one end of the earth to the other, may Adonai's name be acclaimed. God's glory is above the heavens, high above that of any people. Adonai, your name is eternal. Adonai, you are known in every generation. That, remembered, it's a better translation. Adonai established a throne in the heavens. Adonai's dominion is over all. Let the heavens be glad and the earth rejoice. As the people of the world declare, Adonai reigns. Adonai is sovereign. Adonai has always been sovereign. Adonai will be sovereign forever and ever. Adonai is sovereign forever, even as peoples pass away from God's land. Adonai overturns people's designs and foils the schemes of nations. Human hearts devise many plans, but God's plans hold true for each generation. Adonai's design endures forever. God's counsel is for each generation. It was God who spoke and brought everything into being. It was God who commanded that they exist. Adonai chose Zion, desiring it as a dwelling place. Adonai chose Jacob as a treasured people. Israel as a treasured people. There was a word I skipped. Adonai will not abandon this people, will not desert the inheritors of divine favor. God, who is compassionate, will forgive all sin and not wreak destruction, for again and again God acts with restraint, refusing to let rage become all-consuming. Adonai, help us, sovereign, answer us when we call. Any feelings that this brings out first?
The number 18 is clear. On the other hand, I would be hard pressed to create any kind of one-to-one relationship between the Amidah brachot and this, maybe it's more of an allusion to, the 18 brachot.
Right, so
19 brachot.
some of these are easier to pair up than others.
It
Yes.
seems like a pastiche of, and there were many such questions of biblical verses that were, we have one in Mari that became that additional bracha after Hashkivenu.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's a very interesting place. Also, in part, the Pesukei de Zimra originally really was people who would come together communally for Baruch Hu. So this might have been done in the synagogue on an individual basis, or even possibly at home, before people came to the synagogue. So I'm not sure what's going on with this, what's driving these particular 18, why it's before Ashrei,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, it is. Some of these verses match. Bless you. Match fairly well to various brachot of the Amidah. Some of them it is much more of a stretch.
You don't get the immediate buildup of Abraham.
Right. We really don't get one that feels like it matches to the Avot.
Yeah.
The God is the God of our forefathers, and highlighting this relationship. That doesn't feel like it's anywhere here except maybe the line of God chose Jacob and Israel as a treasured people. Maybe. But it's in some ways treated as an analog to not Aseret Adibrot, that's a different thing, to the Shemona Esrei, to the 18 blessings.
I had a hard time relating the margin on the English side, Abraham Joshua, the quote from Abraham Joshua Hesh. I have a hard time relating that to the verses.
That our quote in the column, in the margin, feels like it's not, doesn't relate to what's actually going on in the piece of Pesukei de Zimra. What does it say?
So what's your thought on what's your thought on what it's doing?
This amalgamation? So my thought on what this mix of verses is doing is actually similar to what my thought on Vayevarech David is doing, on that first paragraph of David's blessing. Is that these two pieces are taking sources from Tanakh, sources that have some kind of innate holiness to them because they're part of Tanakh, because they're part of the Bible, and giving an example of what prayer could be. That any one of these 18 verses is something you could turn to for prayer. Because when we think about prayer, and particularly if you're ever learning about prayer outside of a fixed context, there's two kinds of prayers. There's the prayers that are fixed, that you have to do these certain prayers during this certain time, and they have to have a particular ending, they should include particular themes and particular pieces. But then there's a different kind of prayer, there's extemporaneous prayer. And Pesukei de Zimra, as Rabbi Lubliner highlighted, is to start out, it has been codified. But to start out, and for a very long time, it was the extemporaneous prayer that you do on waking up in the morning and preparing yourself for the Shacharit service that would start at Baruch. So knowing that not everybody has the entire liturgical structure and the entire Tanakh memorized, these pieces are here to be an example of here's things you can draw upon to bring your own prayer, to bring yourself into prayer and create something that is meaningful as a conversation with God for you. That these are our 18 verses that all talk about God's strength, God's relationship with the people, God's power in the universe, and the various roles that God can have as a way, that if you can't think of anything, but you want to say something, these are ways you can do it. Like David's prayer is an example of, here's a really quick way to get all of the things in, all of the different pieces of prayer that you could have. Here's all of them in a concise way, and maybe that's all you can blurt out, but it's something. Yeah, Wendy?
If you were putting together a liturgy, wouldn't you put this a little more to the beginning of the psuke? Since it's an opening, if you're thinking of it as an opening to prayer, if I can't think of any other words, here's an example.
So if I were structuring, making sure I'm understanding the question, if I were structuring Pesukei de Zimra, if I were putting together a Siddur, maybe wouldn't we put it earlier so we have the example earlier? Maybe. And
This is when people show up.
what?
But this is when
this is when people show up. But I do think right before Ashrei is an intentional choice. That later on when we talk about what do you have to do for Pesukei de Zimra, is you have to say the last 5 Psalms. So if you put it right before Ashrei, then you're putting it at the spot where you know people are going to be starting if they're doing the bare minimum. And earlier, maybe.
Well, actually, in some, may not be in some prayer traditions, if you look in Sephardic Siddur, you'll see the anthology of verses that we have at the beginning of Pesukei de Zimra, right after Baruch She'amar. It appears before. So that anthology of verses is still part of the morning blessing. So the Sephardim get pretty quickly to Yichavod after Baruch She'amar. And I don't know why that developed that way, but it certainly goes to show you that there are, in different liturgical traditions, Pesukei de Zimra was chopped up a little bit differently, and I couldn't tell you why that is, but so it really is pretty close if you're doing
If you're out of a Sephardic Siddur.
anthology of verses right at the very beginning, and that's before Baruch She'amar. It's interesting why they would put that before Baruch She'amar, but that's a separate question that I have an answer.
And yeah, it also may be the inverse could also be a good idea. Of put these things that can get you into the mindset right before the mandatory prayers, mandatory prayers, the obligatory prayers start. Put them at the end, right before Yishtabach and Baruch Hu. Could also be I don't know anybody that does that, but that could also be like, okay, you've done it. If you're still not in the mindset, here's some ways to get yourself into the mindset.
Or you talked at the beginning about using an Orthodox prayer book, and there are a lot of other chunks that are, were eliminated for the conservative liturgy too. I mean, you get things that we use typically at the end of the service. You got a Don Olam in the middle of.
Right. Well, and I grew up with the full-size Sim Shalom, the one that had everything in it.
Yeah.
A Don Olam was on page 6.
Yeah.
It was also on page 514 and whatever else. Yes.
What you use and what you don't use,
Right.
I mean, there are a couple of us at least who arrive early to be able to say La Sok B'divrei Torah before you actually do verses of. So these decisions are not always easy. But I wanted to make one comment about the marginalia, that sometimes the idea of the prayers not being exactly what you need at the moment, you need to expand if I go a different direction. I know that in the Shabbos services, when we go to the Korbanot, so I go and I read Pirkei Avot. So, but I've always said that if you took out everything that would be potentially objectionable to anyone, you would not
You'd be left with
able to
nothing.
worship together as a community.
It wouldn't be a community.
Right. If you took out everything that somebody might object to from the Siddur, you probably would not be left with much of a Siddur. Is this a race? Yes. Marcus? Maybe not.
More space.
Marcus?
I think it's really interesting just to think about the way it is together. I don't think anthology of biblical verses is the right word. But it's really hard to write a poem that's valuable in any kind of way. Say, whichever rabbi or rabbis did this is creating a very different fashion. It's a serious challenge to take 18 poems and say, cut these up and choose one line from each poem to form a new poem that is logical and structured in itself.
Yes. The talent it took to put these together is,
It's a different,
or the thought.
it's a very different sort of challenge. It's very different, it's different from the other songs.
Right, and some of these pieces there are a few verses from a couple of different songs. If you look in the citations, well, there's one verse from Exodus. There's that. The second, third, and fourth verse in here are all from Psalm 113 in order. But then later on, you have verse 10 of Psalm 33. And then a verse from Proverbs, and then verse 11 of Psalm 33. There's some very intentional thought in how these were amalgamated. I'm not sure that anthology is the right word either. Amalgamation. Quilted. Yes. Yeah, Wendy.
I read the sidebar.
Okay.
The second paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
I don't quite understand.
Which second paragraph?
What we have learned from Jewish
that one.
history, that if a person is not more than human, then he or she is less than human. Judaism is an attempt to prove that in order to be a human being, you have to be more than a single human, that in order to be a people, we have to be more than a people. Israel was made to be a holy people. This is the essence of its dignity and the essence marriage. I thought we were all like one person made in the image of God, and that none of us is more or less than anybody else.
But you can't be just for yourself.
I can't speak for Heschel, because I never met him to ask him those questions. But I would read it as that.
I don't understand it.
That's fair. He can be confusing sometimes.
No, but it's like Hillel, with the,
Yeah.
if I'm only for myself.
Right. So I read it in a similar of the, like, if I'm only for myself, who will be for me? If I'm not, or no. If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm only for myself, when am I?
If not now, when?
And if not now, when? But I read it maybe more, for me, for my understanding of this, is maybe more than human isn't a great translation, but being both human and godlike, which is a Schulweis thing, not a Heschel idea. But to be, that humanity's role is to be godlike, L-I-K-E. To emulate the divine. And that maybe that's our role. I don't know.
Well, if you look at the first paragraph,
We've gotten into a little bit of a sidebar, which is first paragraph.
the first paragraph says, nothing can be regarded as valuable unless assessed in relation to something higher in value. Humanity's survival depends on the conviction that there is something that is worth the price of life.
Right. So humanity can be assessed in relationship with God, though how do you assess the value of God if there, because there would be nothing, and maybe that's what he's getting to.
Commenting on the opening,
Yes, this is,
right?
yeah.
So how is it that God finds God's honor is found in God taking joy, God's experience of joy in God's creatures, God's creations?
And that's,
It's in relation to just
that
the
line. I bet that Rabbi Adam.
Okay. Yeah, so that marginalia is, I think, commenting on specific lines and not the whole thing, the piece as a whole, which might be why it's confusing in relation to the piece as a whole. Yeah, Wendy. Okay, maybe. So in a summary, this was a look. There's two things to highlight. Is one, the when we think about extemporaneous prayer and when we think about even fixed prayer, it doesn't have to be words that totally come out of our own heads. Extemporaneous prayer can be something that's already written down. It just is being used in this moment as a prayer. And the liturgy does this. It takes things that are already existing in Torah, in Nevi'im, in Ketuvim, in other places, Talmud and Mishnah and Midrashim, and uses them as a prayer, because one of the important things about this is taking pieces of tradition and holding onto them and connecting to them and making them our own. So as we look at David's prayer, how can we make that our own? How can we make these verses and all of the prayers in this book and pieces of Torah that are in here or not in here, how can we make those our own and part of our own Jewish practice and life? So that's the question I want to leave everyone with, is how do we take these pieces and make them a part of our practice in a way that is each of ours and meaningful.
Thank you.
So, take
9:50.
a quick stretch, 2-minute break if you need to get into another quick nosh or something to drink. And then Chazan is going to take us into a musical journey of why we sing our prayers.
So I can't stay for yours. I have to walk a dog.
Man, you look close, man. Y'all come back, bring the dog.
You know, I've got to get the dog better trained. When he smells the things inside of here, he's going to want to say, I like it. Let me show you how much I like it. Then I want to be welcomed back.
Soon. Not soon, not now.
minor reading with Hebrew because I can't even move my finger that fast sometimes.
So we'll reflect for a moment. Took a little longer than I thought it would. Some schmoozers in the house. So I'll rephrase my original question. So what changed in the room over the last 5 minutes? What changed? In the space that we created. What changed in the last 5 minutes?
I moved.
You moved. Okay, great. What else?
There was a melody.
There's a melody. Okay.
It was fun. It was uplifting.
Okay.
Calmed our nerves.
Did you feel more present in the space?
Especially when I can follow it.
Okay. What about maybe more calm? Anyone felt more calm? Okay. What about a sense of community?
It's shared, we all hear the same thing. Not maybe the same way, but all hear the same thing.
I thought you were just trying to get us to stop talking.
That also was part of the something I work with our friends in our Neshuva service is learned at a song leading camp we went to a number of times is having a melody already in the space when you're entering it. It's a little different from us because we're coming in and out, but to have the melody set the tone, right? It's a different space than everyone schmoozes and here, we're going to start on page 65, right? It's a different vibe when you come in with melody as part of your welcoming moment. And so even if it might not happen immediately, it might happen 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later. One of my teachers said that to do a good nigun, a good melody, is something you do 20 times. We normally don't do nigunim 20 times in our community. We would, our caterer would be a little upset on that. But to do it in a repetition that is becomes sort of just part of who we are as a community because we started off with that melody. So tonight we're exploring why Jews sing prayer, and then also not why we sing during prayer, but if the melody itself can be that form of prayer. Rabbi Romano spoke about the texts that we use, and we're going to go a little bit into the texts, but also just what is the power of melody itself. Right? So that was a nigun, which is a wordless melody. It never had words. There are melodies that we can think of as a nigun, but also take us to a place, right? Ya la 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 la. See, people forget. I know we only had 7 weeks before, in between Pesach and Shavuot, which also now means that we're 3 months away from the next big event. He who shall not be named, or she who shall not be named. Right, a tune can also transport us to a place. It can transport us to a memory, right? You might have heard that tune and said, all right, that reminds me of the time I sat with my grandparent in synagogue, right? Just, right, so it's definitely a familiar tune, right? Right, if I... Right, suddenly we're sitting at Shabbat dinner. Maybe we're sitting in Friday night services. But we have that moment where we suddenly are transported through the melody that we hear. So as we go through, in my mind, I actually planned 2 separate teachings that were one more technical and one more abstract. And so tonight we're going to do abstract, but maybe in another, for those who are interested, we'll find another time for the more technical things. Now we can pass. I always find that when you pass things out, that then people are looking at their things and not, yeah, you can take all of them. So we're going to look at ways in which music stirs us. And a number of these sources are in a great book, Torah of Music, by Joey Weisenberg. He's a musical director of the Hadar Dvash Parsha magazines. Some of the things were assessed by, I feel like we did this last time with Josh Fleet.
I think we did. He's also my son's boss.
Yes, right. Yes, there was some holiday we did recently where, no, it was Tisha B'Av. Exactly, that's what it was. Josh had translated Yosef Goldman's something, right? That's what it was.
Right.
So he's everywhere.
Yeah.
So in the Torah music, these are different resources of just mentioning of music in Tanakh, in rabbinic literature, and so I gleaned some of those for our study session tonight. So the first section we're going to look at is called, so anyway, on the top, right, what can music do? We kind of did some of this a little bit, right? Mark sacred time, that when you hear something, it's like, this is Shabbat, right? Just like sometimes when people hear an organ, people tell me, this sounds like church, right? Some people tell me that, even though, ironically, right, our brothers and sisters in the Reform movement have had an organ for many years, but right, people associate a certain sound with a certain moment, and so right, this marks sacred time. This sounds like Shabbat, right? It has a memory that that takes us to a certain place and time. Maybe it was the first time we heard that melody. Maybe it was who we were doing that thing with. Maybe it was I was just talking to a young couple about the music they play in their cars, and the mom plays opera, and the dad doesn't. I don't really, right? And actually, that was like my childhood as well. My mother played Carole King and James Taylor, and my dad played opera, and so that's where my musical interests come from. And neither allowed me to play the drums, which is why I compensate to this day, right? So that's carrying memory when you have melody, right? What I wanted to create in our nigun, building community. Right? We breathe and sing together. We're all singing the same thing. It's that common thread that connects all of us. And of course, how we sing a prayer, which we can go to at some point as well, right? That the text becomes joyful, urgent, tender, awe-filled. Right? There's all these different emotions that can happen depending on how we sing a text. Right? I gave the example a couple months ago. We were talking about Min HaMeitzar. Right, out of the depths I call to you, which we hear in Hallel. We'll hear tomorrow for those who are here bright and early. Min hametzar karatiyah. So, right, that's out of the depths I call to you. That could be a very different melody and a different experience depending on right. Min hametzar karatiyah. Right, out of the depths I call to you, which is how we sing it, right? As opposed to some of the other examples we've done, which are a little softer and like calling out, crying out, which is maybe a different experience with that same exact text. So how can we be touched by a melody? So the first two texts we have at the bottom of the page are both of the king's story, and we might be familiar with our, especially King David and the power of music in the ancient time of the kings. So, Kings 2. But now, get me a musician. And when the musician played, the hand of the Lord came upon him. So this idea of that one is healed, right? Right. This is the prophet Elisha, counting out in the Second Kings. When the musician plays, right, divine inspiration comes upon him. There's some type of connection to God through the power of music. And the second source from Samuel, when Saul, right, this is Saul encountering this band of prophets who all had instruments, and again, this Spirit of God coming upon him and sort of changing him in some way. Here it says, when you reach the city, you will encounter a band of prophets. Now, this is, you don't know, might be a pun, but this is actually like a group of prophets, not a band of prophets. Though that could be, okay? Like a band of thieves, a band of prophets. Descending from the high place. And what were before them? They have like Nevel, Toph, Khalil, Kinor, right? That they have the harp, the drum, the flute, and they will, Vehema mit navi'im, right? That they will be navi, they will be prophesizing. There will be a prophecy. And what will happen in the next verse? The Spirit of God will rush over you, and you will prophesy with them, transforming into a different person. Right? Ish acher, achar, like another person. So the idea that this music puts us in a different place. The hand, Spirit of God in this text is a way of referring to prophetic inspiration. Music is always, in part, a performance, even if it comes along with something greater, like bringing a community together in song. Perhaps the same could be said about prophecy, of transmitting God's will. Right? This is at the time of the prophets, so that is their the main job of the people we're also talking about. Why else might you think it is specifically music that triggers prophecy? This is like, and we're talking about the time of the prophets. So what is the power of music to bring prophecy?
Well, it's creative, it's wrapped up in creativity, I think. And so when you're in that creative mode, you're open to what the universe is putting out, what God may be putting out, what the universe is putting out, and so it all kind of melds together and comes out. This is what it's a vision. I see this.
Right, it's very beautiful. So like an out-of-body experience to, yeah.
Yeah, I always feel that music really touches your soul. So like if you're in that space of really having your soul present, then I guess that's easy to prophesy.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I have a very unhelpful description. The bundles of dendrites and axons that are excited when you hear music are also in that same part of the brain that helps with mathematics and seeing things in a methodical way.
Okay, right. So, also think about those. Right, often great art comes from, again, this out of body, whether it be through dance, through psychedelic medicine, right? Anything that can kind of put you and kind of loosen you up, right? That's also what music can do. Like get you out of your comfort zone. And sometimes in our comfort zone, we are rigid and within this world and thinking about what you can and cannot do. And prophecy, you have to take a little leap of faith. And maybe you're not ready to do that in the rigidity of the normal life, but music kind of takes us out of our that rigidity to be creative. Yeah.
It's interesting thinking about music and prophecy because I normally associate prophecy with words, but I find words narrow what we can be thinking about, whereas music opens it up to many possibilities, whereas words are very definitional.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah.
So this must be why baseball players have a tune to play before they come up the bat against the wall.
Yeah, there's the psychology there. Yeah.
It creates a frame, whereas somebody just coming up to the bat, wouldn't in the same way.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
It's about the rhythm.
Yeah.
It's about the rhythm. And it's also analogous to the highs and the lows of whatever you're going through. When you're singing up and down, going to different limits, relaxes you so you're able to feel deeper. And I think it has to do with the rhythm.
Yeah.
We've kind of like said this already, but music kind of like creates a different space, almost the same way that like lighting a candle is the difference between
Yes.
Nonprofit.
Right. Mundane and holy. Right. Yeah. There you go. Right. Yes. Not to.
And especially in the context of prophecy, it kind of allows for a space to be made up for and by that holiness.
Yeah. So, and also we are familiar with a lot of these instruments, right? I joked about the band of prophecy, but it really is a band. And it's not just drum, and it's not just shofar, right? It's harp, drum, flute, right? Those are also represent different styles, right? Different experiences, to Bobby's point, right? That this is a shared, right? That you were talking about, like, right, the highs and lows of life. That also is what instrumentation and music in general bring out in us. And so for a prophet to also be in that dark place sometimes, because music can also take us to the dark place, that also might be where they can find their prophecy. All right, so we're on the next one. And this is from Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. The restorative power of melody. You were talking about the healing power of melody. It's good for a person to accustom himself to reviving himself with the nigun, right, the wordless melody, because nigun is a powerful and mighty tool, and it has the great strength to awaken a person and point his heart towards the blessed name. And even one who doesn't know how to play music or sing out loud even can sing to himself and through that revive himself. For the lift of a nigun cannot be measured. Right? So we have this idea that we are sort of captives to, we talked about being in the mundane world, to other things, and we need something to awaken us, to get us out of that captivity, right? These unhealthy prisons. It allows us to reclaim our hopes, our connections, rediscover the divine life within us, right? Right? If you sing a simple melody a few times, right? How does that change our mental state, our physical state? We kind of answered this a little bit already. When we sing something just simple, gets in our brain. Does anyone ever get a song in their head? Mm-hmm. Song, melody, yeah, okay. Right? And it might be annoying to the other people in the room, right? When you have a tune that you can't get out of your head, but what does it do for you? Yes. It takes you to the next level, yeah. What's that?
It depends. I think for some people it can be very transformative thing. For some people it's like that is suddenly all you can think about. You can't do, like, it's
Suddenly you become you're a prisoner to the melody. Yes, right. I could give some examples, but then I really would apologize. And Sham.
If it's been in my head for 2 days, it's great. If it's been in my head for 2 weeks, I am going insane.
Yes. Right, but the idea also that we'll talk about the power of communal singing, right? But Nachman of Breslov is talking also about, right? It doesn't matter if you know how to play an instrument. You can still love music, right? You can still be moved by music, even if you are not the most quote-unquote musical person, right? Someone says, well, I'm tone deaf. Does that mean that you can't enjoy music? No. Also, we talked about the rhythms. There's other aspects that one can appreciate, right? And even if you're humming to yourself, not in community, that can also kind of lift you out of places. Wendy?
Even those people who are deaf and cannot hear can feel the vibrations of musical instruments, and they say it does transform them.
Yeah. Beautiful. All right, let's look at the next one, and then we'll move on to each of these is sort of an aspect of the power of music. So this is also under the restorative power of melody, which is in similar fashion in terms of lifting others up when one cannot lift one's own voice. So Rabbi Pinchas of Koretz was writing in 1872 in Lvov. Sometimes when a person sings, he cannot raise his voice. But when someone comes to help and sing strongly, this in turn gives the first person the ability to raise his own voice to match. This is of the secret significance of uniting soul to soul. Right? This also can go the other way around too, right? That right, you're having a nice moment and suddenly someone wants to sing, you're singing along to the radio in a nice voice and suddenly someone else starts singing along and you're like, Man, that could happen. I don't think they didn't have the radio back in 1872, but we can see the flip side, right? Has anyone experienced this in some way? Where maybe you were not 100% sure, but once you, right? Even in the space we had, right? It was the first 7 go-arounds of our Nigun was me and Beth, right? And she kept going, right? And eventually, right? Thank you. And then eventually we had other, I looked around the room, I knew who was singing along, right? And it took a few other people to sing, and they're like, oh, okay, that suddenly became a much stronger community. So this idea of, the power to have someone else's voice lift your voice when you're not 100% sure. Thoughts on that before we move to...
I just want to share, many years ago, I went to a UAHC, well, that's what they used to call it, now it's for Union of Reform Judaism or something. It was a biennial.
Yeah.
And we had Shabbat services. And there, I guess there were probably maybe 400 people there. I mean, it was an incredible number of people. And I have never forgotten the experience of singing with that kind of community and the songs and of the Reform movement at that time. And talk about transformative. And that experience has stayed with me. We're talking a long time ago. and
Yeah, but still today, that the biennial, that's, before COVID, they would have 5,000 people at biennial, yeah. I mean, think about a different religion of sorts, right? In baseball, okay? What's the big moment in a baseball game? The 7th inning stretch, right? Not that you're watching people stretch, that you're singing together, right? And you're having 30,000 people sing a song together, right? There's that power of the quantity, and also we talked about losing in your inhibitions. You're not worried about what everyone's doing it. Do it, right? And so you're not self-conscious of as one voice as opposed to, yeah. Yes.
Probably the singiest sport. There's every team has at least probably, I don't know, conservative number here, 15 million songs about the team, about the other team, depending on who you're playing, et cetera, and everyone is singing all the time. It doesn't matter. Home and away, everyone's singing.
There's a significant difference, and I've noticed this, especially on trips to Israel, where we've taken people to different minyanim for Kabbalat Shabbat, whether it's Yakar or Navatila or Shira Chadasha, and people who have told me that you really, unless you have musical instruments and people who are professionals, you're not going to have a certain sound effect. And then they went, and it's the whole room, and the whole room is singing, and it's such a huge game changer because you immediately feel like you are part of a community and that you are in very much the same, not just the same physical space, but you're in shared spiritual space. And there is nothing like it, and you can have the most talented musical group and the most, you can have the most talented chazan, but if it's just the individual, as much as I'm sure he's a great guy, I've never met him. He's certainly a very talented chazan, somebody like Nazi Schwartz. If it's a performance as opposed to a spiritual experience, and I haven't been at Park Avenue on a Shabbat morning, so I don't know what it's like and whether everybody's singing, in which case
It is a spiritual moment,
Yeah.
I've been there.
Yeah.
But it's different when you have everybody, when you have, yes, 500 people, but when you even have 75 people, or 50 people.
Right.
But they're all singing.
Yes, a packed, whatever the space is, right? Like it could be 70, it could be 50 people on a Friday night, but everyone's singing, right? And it also goes, you think about like the own vibrations in your own body, right? If you're just listening to performance, right? That's a different experience. You know, like I've gone to, you know, we have a musician, I won't out him. You know, Leora and I went to him 15 years ago. We loved the music. We sat the whole time and we just listened, right? And then we went to, you know, Jimmy Buffett of blessed memory, and you know, and everyone's having the time. We're all singing along, right? It's a different experience when you're, right? It wasn't like I didn't appreciate the first one, but it was just right when you're singing along and everyone is singing along. You feel that again the vibrations in your own body. Speaking of vibrations in your own body, all right. So our next section is a good pun. We have a couple good puns coming up. From Rabbi Kalonimus Chalmers Shapira in Poland, who spoke in 1889. Sometimes a person must build ladders, sulamot, to climb to the heavens. A nigun is one of these ladders. By the way, sulam was our strategic plan thing, right? Remember Jacob's ladder, right? But this idea of a nigun, a melody, is one of these ladders. Specifically, when we sing after the joy of a mitzvah with a heart broken open, right? Belev nishbar, a broken heart, right? But this is after the joy of a simcha, a joyous occasion. So, what do you think it means to sing after the joy of a mitzvah with a heart broken open?
Well, you're so happy that your heart is just as full as it can be. It's sort of broken open, because normally your heart is just there. But when you have such a joyous thing happen, like the bar mitzvah, my grandchildren, you know, your whole body is your heart.
Beautiful. It's a beautiful play on a broken heart, right? We normally think of a broken heart as a negative,
Yeah.
right? But in this, and that is, I mean, Belev nishbar is a broken heart. But in this context, right, it's like the blood's flowing out. We're just on cloud nine. Right? That would be another phrase. And you're just immersed in a joyous moment, right? When you see a birth of a child, or you have a bar bat mitzvah, or someone of elderly age makes it to that milestone birth, like whatever it is, right? Just recognizing the moment, but still allowing yourself to be in the moment. That is an opportunity, right? And then it's accompanied by singing. Yeah.
I kind of experienced that today. I went to my granddaughter's graduation, and the kids were like really happy, and you know how an 11, 10 years old is. Then they all got together and sang, and while they were singing, I actually saw every single fifth grader that was graduating almost couldn't finish a song because they all started crying. And I think that's pretty much what happened, you know. It's like I'm graduating, I'm leaving this school, and leaving my friends, but the whole experience come out while they were singing.
I always think of the slideshows that we always do at the moving up or the graduation, right? The slideshows have music, right? And it's always those songs that just like, you know, there's this, or I made my daughter's bat mitzvah montage, right? And I made sure that they were tear-jerking melodies that would, you know, get everyone going, right? Not just the photos, but it was also having that music. Any other thoughts on bringing joy? Yeah.
I think that there is the whole idea of Belev nishbar is there is a power in the immediacy of that moment that you know can't last. And so no song can last forever, or whatever that perfect moment of joy, you're just also cognizant in that, living in that moment, that you have that moment of perfection, but you're going to have to take a breath. The note is going to fade. You're going to, move to another part of the song. And so there's a realization of both the beauty, but the fact that it's like a moment when you're in eternity, but you're also cognizant that eternity is very fleeting.
Well, that happens at Bar Mitzvah, right? We sing Simon Tov, Mazel Tov, and then we end by saying Shehechti Yam, and this happened again sometime in the future.
Right, and there's the peak of that, and then it's over, right? It's like,
Right,
and then you gotta, right, you have to soak it in while it can last. Wendy, you had a...
I was going to say that the best composers understand music theory well enough that when they're trying to get to a denouement or some especially important part of the passage, they will change the key, they will change the notes, they'll make it diminished or augmented chord, and it is meant to grab you, and it does.
So part two, right, what makes that time that we've been talking about, what makes it the perfect time to build ladders to the heavens? When your heart's broken open.
Vulnerability.
What's that?
Vulnerability.
Yeah. Why do you think the image is of a ladder as opposed to just connecting to the heavens? Rabbi Gaffney used to talk about, observance, right? Observance of mitzvot is like a ladder, right? That you don't fly, it's not a bungee cord that you can just zip line that you can zip up to the heavens, right? That there's steps, right? And maybe that's also part of it, right? That you're building a ladder. You're not there. You're starting, right? So that each of those memories is also an opportunity to be one step, right? It's like a taste of Olam Haba, like the taste of the world to come, right? Is if you can kind of compartmentalize all those different moments of those liminal moments of joy, and even also just after the Simcha Shel Mitzvah, right? It's the joy of a mitzvah. Right? So it doesn't have to be the liminal moments. It can say, you know what, I was kind, I performed any type of mitzvah, and through that mitzvah, I had one more step on the ladder. So it doesn't have to be the moments of that we're thinking of. Yes, Jeff.
Well, just the progression of an octave, going back in progression, like a mitzvah.
Yeah, like a scale. Yeah. I like it. Yeah.
I think no matter how open your heart is to feeling the emotions and how easy it is for you in that moment to access those emotions, it's not going to take one repetition of the nigun to get all the way there. That in some ways, nigun is a ladder, so you need to do it over and over and over to get to wherever it is you need to be.
Great, right? And which also, right, the nigun might do 1,000 times and still only be one. But we're moving in the right direction at this point. Right? All right, I alluded to this a little bit. Music restores a person's mind. So from the Babylonian Talmud, 3 things restores a person's mind. Shel Adam Elohim. Kol, a voice. Mar'eh, sights. Vareach, and smells. So what is the power of sounds, or in this case voice, but any type of music, sights and smells to restore a person's mind? You don't have to talk about, you can talk about sights and smells if you want, but why those 3? not touch, not hearing, right? We're thinking about our senses, right? Or a little bit, the sound.
Music soothes
Yeah.
the savage beast.
Okay, nice.
Bugs Bunny.
Yeah, Wendy.
The brain doesn't have a place to store pain, physical pain. There is no woman who has had one child who would have a second child if she could remember the pain. You know you have pain, but you can't bring that back. You can bring back music, you can hear it in your head, you can see sights, you can feel things, you can smell things, you can almost taste them. But there's certain feelings that we don't have access to because the brain doesn't store them.
Right, on the flip side, right? So like, right, when you smell something, right, it can take, I can remember my grandparents' home. I smell it, depending on who I'm visiting, right? Right, there's certain smells of a dish that also might take you back to a memory. So smell is definitely a powerful one, right? What's the power of sight? How does that restore our minds? What's an example of seeing something that, yeah?
Seeing rainbow, seeing sunshine, any of those kinds of things. Flowers can really open up.
Yeah. Right, so a lot of natural beauty too, right? Like we think about also the godlike power of those things, right?
I think in some ways also sight is the one that is easiest to, if you need a moment of refocus, sight is often the easiest to draw yourself to specific things and break whatever anxiety cycle or whatever is happening in your head, because there's so much to see. Sight is the one that is easiest to focus in on small things, to break out of cycles.
Rabbi, in our new Lev Shalem, are there all the brachot for the random things in that? Have you seen that? Okay. Because what's interesting is a lot of the brachot that we have in our Siddur, right, upon seeing this, upon seeing fragrant flowers, smelling, right? They're right, hearing good news. That's the closest, but not, music isn't necessarily part of that, but is part of our cycle. Yeah, Ron.
It's also interesting because there's been lots about a walk in nature, what difference that can make, but now there's new research on what it's doing for seniors to extend life, that walk every day and seeing the beauty and being outside is different than being inside. So.
Yeah, mine.
I think for me, when we had COVID and we weren't meeting in person, I got accustomed to sitting out on my front porch, where I did a lot of gardening in that area, and there were constantly birds, butterflies, flowers, different things going on, different smells depending on the time of the year. Somebody was running a fire in their chimney. And to this day, I am very sad to say this, but I sometimes really need Shabbat to be on the front porch, listening in the background to the streaming services and experiencing that same kind of calm and appreciation for the world that was created.
So to Ronnie's point about seniors, so I do some work in the memory care at River Garden, and so often doing melodies of people's. I joked a couple weeks ago because I said I always imagined that I'd be singing Eufen Pripyatchik and other Yiddish standards for many years, and now we've moved into like the number one song is Sweet Caroline. So it just. That's where we're at, But to have a melody be a calm, like remember talking about restoring a person's mind, right? Someone who is going through, they didn't have, I don't know what kind of dementia existed 2,000 years ago, but the idea of restoring someone's mind with the power of music therapy and bringing in melodies from someone's past.
You have David and King Saul.
Yeah, right. Right. People were troubled, that's for sure. All right, let's do our last source here, which fed in nicely a little bit with Rabbi Romano's teaching about from Pizukei to Zimra. Again, this is another word play, just like we had with this Sulam. Look, first of all, we say Pizukei de Zimra, the verses of song about which the rabbis of blessed memory said, why are these called, right, verses of song, Zimra, since they pare away, mizamrim, the husks. But look, who has ever seen husks left about on the floor of a synagogue? I mean, maybe during our 125th gala, they had a lot of things out from the archives, but I don't think I saw any husks on the floor. Rather, it means, right, that to pare away, mizamer, the husks from one's heart and soul. Right? So we're going back to what we need to do with, there's a deep connection with all these, with the power of music and the heart. So we continue in this through all of the hymns on the Zmirot, right? Zmirot are songs we would do at the table. We pare away the husks of the negative qualities we feel within us, right? And after, we are ready to pray, implying connection, uniting the one's inner thoughts to the loftiness of one's divinity. And when the recitation of the Shema arrives, then a complete unity with the Holy Blessed One is made. Right? So we're taking that whole experience of Pizukei de Zimra to pare away each morning all those negative things that might kind of already be seeping in. Right? We had a nice, doesn't matter how well we slept, right? That we have those thoughts and those other things that are the anxieties when we realize in the middle of Pizukei de Zimra, oh, I forgot to do this, or I have this to do today, right? All those things that might be negative qualities within us, and then we have to pare them away. So what do you feel you have to pare away when you prepare yourself for prayer and song? What's something that you don't have to go too personal, but are there things that one might pare away? I gave a couple examples. And it doesn't have to be within Pizukei de Zimra. It can be, yes, yeah.
For me, Kabbalat Shabbat helps me to separate from, I'm not here for Pizukei, I can't tell you about that.
It's the Pizukei of Shabbat, yeah.
For Kabbalat Shabbat, it does take time to let the week and the craziness of whatever was going on go, and then be ready to welcome Shabbat.
Yeah.
It just helps to quiet down our monkey minds.
Yeah. All right, so calming, soothing. Any thought on the husks and that image? Does that stick with anyone?
Well, I mean, it's actually, it's a very, very clever play on words.
Yeah.
The Zamer also means to prune.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I'm not using the word, well, it actually does.
It does, yeah.
So Kabbalistically, the idea is that these little sparks of God's light get encrusted with just life, not the sort of complacency, insensitivity, all of these sparks of the original supernal light with which God made the world get covered with these crusts. You can't see them anymore. So you have to clean them off, as it were. You've got to remove these peels, these crusts, in order to have these little bits of divine light, Shekhinah light.
We're like coal miners that have to...
if you will. And I think that one of the things that we really don't do enough of, whether individually or as a community, we kind of rush in. In the Mishnah, it talks about how the pious of old used to just really kind of sit and meditate for an hour for their prayers, and then after they would sit for an hour. And we don't have that time, but one of the things, rushing for services tonight, example, coming in 3 minutes before, you know, the time for services, to be able to clean off these husks. It's hard to find time to do that, and I wonder if the music and the melodies would be if we all had that time to just chill. And sort of settle our minds. We all sat in this space, whether it's Friday night or Shabbat morning, for 15 minutes, just before services start. And I do see people on Saturday morning who do that. There are only maybe a half dozen, maybe, but there are people who come, you know, at 8:40 and sit for 15, 20 minutes before the service starts. And I haven't talked to them, but I wonder, you know, whether even subconsciously that has been a driver doing that.
Yeah, fine.
Well, the conservative synagogue that we used to attend when we went north in the summer, I guess 45 minutes before a service was a Shabbat morning, you had a choice of either going to a music with the cantor would read a sort of a meditation music session, or you could go with the rabbi and you could discuss the Torah reading before services. So it sort of gets you into the mood when you walk in and start
The Sukkot Zimra was all one line usually, not singing over, but one line
of singing over and over.
and then going on to
Yeah,
something.
and that's also why, when a number of years ago, we truncated what we do on Shabbat morning. So we do highlights. And for the most part, we picked, obviously there's ones that you have to do, but the ones we kept were also the ones that had melody. Right, there was a nigun that we were familiar with. And so that was important because why just do the end line? Like if we're just doing, the rote, box here, box here, box there, and not recognizing these are melodies that could be sung out loud, to rabbis, why we don't always have all the time in the world, especially on a weekday. But on Shabbat, we should be pruning ourselves, getting them in the mood musically too. So some food or music for thought. So thanks all y'all for joining session number 2. And 5 minutes, right?
Yeah. Go prune.
There is something I laugh about. Every Shabbat.
Rabbi, I apologize.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And the first song we start singing.
Yes, is on the day of sacrifice. Yes.
Sacrifice.
Well, there's
And we're all singing this.
it's like a famous cantorial one. So I used to be stupid in English just to show people, that's really, that doesn't always,
Singing about
yeah. That's why, so, I don't know, someone asked me about, something I kind of said, sometimes when I do art Halloween.
Yeah.
Right, because then I'm, in my mind, I'm less connecting with sacrificial worship and more of our connection to our ancestral homeland.
Yes.
And that's, so like from a thematic standpoint, it makes me, Mark Weeder, and Eileen are not sacrificial worship people. But I was like,
Yeah, I think that the vegetarians.
exactly, yeah. They survived.
Chag Sameach, Gloria.
Do you have a start sheet to pass out?
They're around now. I think on the second row. Yeah, they're all over. They're all over.
Not starting yet. I keep wanting to ask you this, and we've had quite a few taharot in the last couple weeks, so it's really salient. You know, the whole Sreifat Gehenna, we're the Sreifa. I mean, that's not a Jewish idea, is it?
Yeah, it is.
Oh.
We we invented it. The difference is that for us it's not dogmatic, and Gehinnom is never, except for a few well-chosen villains, is not a permanent stopping place. It was
but I didn't,
more equivalent to purgatory.
right, but I thought it was sort of, it was like a nothing, no place, wildness, you know, but I didn't know.
No,
the
in
Sreifa.
Midrash.
I didn't
Oh
know
yeah,
that.
no, in Midrash there are many different descriptions. However, they're all individual rabbinic descriptions where the
Right.
rabbis go to town in their own mind. Same thing with what Gan Eden is. Oh yeah, but you know, soot and black faces and boiling cauldrons and.
See, I didn't know that was a Jewish concept.
Yeah.
And yet, you know, it's mentioned 4 or
Gehinnom
5
is
times in that
was a
first
real
page.
place. And
Well, I know, but
which is,
that's the thing. I thought
but
it
that
was.
became for us. It was never a theological cornerstone of
Right.
why you need to do certain things in life.
But I thought it was like a desolation, an absence, you know, not the active fire business.
Oh no! I mean, in Midrash, you can find that for sure.
Oh, okay.
Oh, and some, Titus has consigned to have a mosquito that is eating his brain, and that it grows ever larger, and he cannot. And Bilam is
Talk
living.
to RFK about it.
Yeah, Bilam is living in a boiling vat of excrement, and Jesus gets a boiling vat of semen. But again, this is not.
Yeah.
This is not catechism. This
Right.
is not.
Right.
This is the fanciful religious imagination of individual rabbis, and. But it's interesting that for most people, I mean, the whole idea of saying Kaddish is to help elevate the soul, so that it's a stage, not a destination.
Yeah.
Which already takes a lot of the theological fear
Right.
out of it. But yeah, if you look through, where's a good place to, if you have Sefer HaAgada or Chaim Nachman Bialik, I think it's William Browdy who did the translation, the Book of Legends.
I do have that.
If you go and look in the section, it's between God and human beings. Like there's one section between, Ben Adam L'Adam, and this is Ben Adam L'Makom. And there's the afterlife and reward and punishment and Gatum. They'll give you some of the selections of.
Strange to me to read it.
Yeah.
And that's usually my role is to read. So.
But it has a venerable history, just not a foundational one. I would put it that way. All right, well, I guess we'll get started up. I don't know if we, is there anybody else out there? All right, unless people flew the coop.
No, there are people.
Okay.
Summon them or let them.
Well, we're going to get started, but if you're happy out there, far be it for me to be unhappy for you. We take no prisoners here, in the good sense. So, Chazan, told you about how to help your prayers be deeper, reach higher, and we're going to talk about what happens when prayer doesn't work. And there's actually a lot of Jewish material about it. I want to frame this in two ways before we look at a number of texts. And don't worry, we are not going to be looking at nearly all of these. You can take them home. One of the first places where we see, if you will, a liturgy of disappointment, or a liturgy of acceptance, let me put it this way, is when we deal with death in Judaism. The first thing that a mourner says when accepting the formal burden of mourning, and which is the time that we do kriya, when we tear our garment, is to say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam dayan ha'emet. Praised are you, Eternal One, Sovereign of the universe, true judge. So at that moment, when we are keenly aware of our loss of a loved one, we are acknowledging our grief, but we're also acknowledging God's role as a judge. The implication on one level is that there has been a judgment made, and we have lost someone we loved, maybe someone we prayed for. We had a mishaberach said. And I have to confess a certain discomfort when people thank me, the mishaberach really made a difference, and my loved one got better. Because I'm so keenly aware of all the times that wasn't the case. So far be it from me to say the mishaberach wasn't efficacious, but I'm also aware of all the times that if that's what it took, it didn't work. Then, a little bit further on during a Jewish funeral, only on days when we omit tachanun, or rather on days when we don't omit tachanun, there is a whole prayer that we say called Tziduk Hadin. It is an amalgamation of mostly biblical verses that acknowledges God's providence and that God is far above our understanding, right? The assumption is that we are questioning, that we are asking God on some level, where were you? And that prayer, Tziduk Hadin, and it really isn't a prayer, it's more of a statement, is to say, you don't know where God was, you will not know where God was. Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach yehi shem Adonai mivarach. The Lord has given and the Lord has taken. Praise be the name of the Lord. Powerful words, difficult words. Over the course of many years, I have come to see the power of those words, Dayan Emet and Siddur Kadin, as essentially telling us not that whoever it was that died got what he or she deserved, but rather that we're not in the driver's seat. And to say that God is a true judge is to say that we are not a true judge. That this is above our, if you will, pay grade. It is about our understanding. And so at a time when we want to know why is life so unfair, we have an affirmation that God is just, God knows what God is doing, and it's just not up to us. It's a very hard thing to wrap one's head around. At a Shiva, we also do something that, or let me ask the question differently. What is the difference between the mourner's Kaddish and Kaddish Shalem? The so-called full Kaddish. Yes. We have a line, Titkabel tzlaton avaton d'chol Yisrael kodam avahon divishmaya v'yimeru amen. May you, God, accept the entreaties, supplications, and prayers of your people that come before you. Kodam avuhon, come before avuhon, right, our Father. And we don't say that in a house of Shiva. As if to say we are reminding, if we did say it, the mourner that, you know, you had all of these hopes, prayers, they didn't come true. They didn't happen. And so it is to say that the line, may the supplications and prayers of your people who come before you, may you grant them. At the time when they weren't granted, we simply don't say that. It's not that we wouldn't say it at another time, but in the presence of the mourner. And the fact that the mourner's Kaddish doesn't have that one line is very deliberate. It is that which makes it a mourner's Kaddish. That one line is the only thing that distinguishes that Kaddish Shalem from the mourner's Kaddish, because each and every time a mourner stands up, it is potentially a reminder of, you know, what didn't come to pass. So in its way, Jewish funeral liturgy, and even the mourner's Kaddish, seek to remind us that we live in a world where wishes, where prayers, where hopes are not always realized. And so we have to be able to grapple, since that is a fact, what do we do with it? How do we relate to God when we're told that prayer is efficacious, however we understand that word, that there are times when prayer will not work? There are lots of different answers to that question. Some of those answers I really don't like at all. Some of those answers, I think, are better. But broadly speaking, there are three types of Jewish prayer. Right? There is prayer of pure praise. There is, when we talk of, shevach, prayers of praise of God. By the way, the quintessential prayer of pure praise, even has a fancy term for it, a doxology, is Kaddish. Look at Kaddish, and people call it mourner's Kaddish. There's nothing about death. There's nothing about mourning. It is a prayer of pure praise. But there are lots of prayers of pure praise. The second kind of type of prayer, archetype of Jewish prayer, is gratitude. There's shevach and there's hoda'ah. By the way, the first three blessings of the Amidah are considered to be blessings of praise, of God's greatness, God's holiness, God's covenant with our ancestors and how gracious God is about that. The last three blessings of the Amidah, though strictly speaking, not exactly all thanks, right? Because the last bracha is a petition for peace, but that has its own, separate categorization. But in the weekday Amidah, those middle blessings are bakashot, blessings of petition. So we start out, we praise God. We have to make sure to say thank you at the end. And in the middle, all of these things that we're supposed to ask of God. And the list, it's a list of good things. That God should grant us discernment, that God should grant us the ability to seek repentance, forgiveness, to be forgiven, redemption, health, that the earth should be fruitful. I mean, these are things that there should be a restoration to Jerusalem, and all of these things are, the rabbis, it's not a gimme, gimme, gimme. These are things that we ask for ourselves because they make us better people, and things that we ask for our people and for the world. Of course, there are, in Judaism, personal prayer has a very critical, important part. In fact, there are places in our liturgy that have built-in niches for us to stick in our own personal prayers. At the end of the Amidah is one such place. In the weekday Amidah, at the end of Shomea Tefillah, the last of the petitionary blessings, ends with Shomea Tefillah, and people put in their requests for a livelihood. You should find a nice Jewish girl for your son. You want parnasa, whatever it is, you can put it in there. And indeed, so long as it's not, a prayer, may God smite so-and-so, and, there are prayers that are less worthy of our better angels. Let's put it that way. But that's where you put that. But remember that section, by the way, Shomea Tefillah is kind of a generic ending. It ends another prayer that is often said, Tfilat HaDerech, right? The traveler's prayer ends the same way, Shomea Tefillah, God who hears prayer. But it's God who hears prayer, not God who grants prayer. It's not Baruch Atah Hashem Magshim Tefillah, right? Or Mekayem Tefillah, who fulfills prayer, who realizes prayer. It's who hears. Hearing and granting are very different things. Right? And you can say Tfilat HaDerech with all of the kavanah, all of the feeling you can muster, and the plane could still crash. God forbid. So theology, Jewish theology, has to evolve a way of dealing with that. And it does. So what I want to do is look at a story, one that you all know, but Midrash actually really fleshes this out. All right, so who is the famous guy who doesn't make it into the Holy Land? It's all he wants to do. It's the one thing. Who is it? Moses. Okay. And in fact, in Deuteronomy, in Parshat Va'et-Hanan, right, Moshe is recounting here, I pleaded with God, right? This is on page 1. Right? Please let me, I pray, cross over, see the good land, blah, blah, blah. But God was wrathful with me and would not listen. And what does God say? Yeah. Quit your belly aching. Al tosef daber elai od badavar hazeh. Literally that is. Don't speak to me about this again. Talk about being shut down. It's not even saying no. It's, I don't want to hear you even ask. It's off the table. Don't worry about saying, my saying no. I'm not even going to listen anymore. Right there in the Torah. So now we see what the rabbis do with this. This is from the Midrash in Dvarim Rabbah. And it's based on, this Midrash is towards the end of Moshe's life. This is based on Parshat Ha'azinu. I'm sorry, this is Vazot HaBracha, it's after Ha'azinu, last 2 chapters of the book of Deuteronomy. Okay, so what happens? Let's go to the highlighted section on page 2. All right, what somebody want to read? Anybody? When Moses saw?
When Moses saw that his sentence had been sealed, he decreed a fast upon himself, drew a small circle, stood within it, and said, I am not moving from here until you void this decree.
By the way, if this reminds you of another fellow, Choni Amagel, who during a time of drought drew a circle around himself and said, I won't move until the rain falls. In that case, God does grant Choni's wish, but the rabbis were very PO'd at Choni and said, you know what, if we'd been around, we would have given him a good lashing, because you don't do that. You don't give ultimatums to God. But apparently Moshe hadn't heard. And so he does this, and what does Moshe do? Right, he dons sackcloth, he wraps himself in sackcloth, he covers himself with ashes, he stands in prayer and supplication, right, until the heavens, the earth, and the very order of creation shook violently. So, what is Moshe doing here?
Behaving like a 3-year-old.
Okay, that's not such a charitable way of putting it, but okay. But what's very revealing about this, remember what is it that God told Moshe? Right. Is Moshe listening? Apparently not. Right, and I actually cut this midrash, I edited the equivalent of 2 full pages out of this. Right? Moshe keeps going back. Now, if you come down a little bit, right, and Moshe blocks God, or rather God blocks Moshe at every turn. How much did Moshe pray? 515 times. How do we know that? The gematria of Va'etchanan is 515. Right? Va'etchanan means, and I pleaded, and I entreated. Okay. Now, understand this is not really about, did Moshe really entreat God 515 times? It's about how the rabbis are viewing this, viewing Moshe, viewing the fact that this greatest of prophets is not being allowed into the one thing that he wanted, serving God, dealing with the Israelites. A thankless, difficult task.
That's who gave Hashem his sense of humor.
I don't know that Moshe thought it was so funny.
No, God has a sense of humor.
Well,
But we believe it.
Moshe offers halachic arguments. Right? We're not going to, in the interest of time, go through all of this. But what Moshe says, he gives kind of logical arguments, such as at the bottom of the page, Master of the universe, if you do not take me into the land of Israel, leave me in this world, and I will live and not die. And God says, look, if I don't kill you in this world, how will I revive you in the world to come? Right? And also, since my Torah, there is no deliverer from my hand. This is from the end of Parshat HaAzinu, that, God is in control of everything. You will render my Torah forgery, so to speak. Master of the universe, all right, if you don't, take me into the land of Israel as a person, well, let me go in as a beast of the field. Let me go in as a goat, as a sheep. Let my soul be like one of them. Or, okay, you don't want to do that, but then let me be a bird. Because a bird, at least I could fly over the land. Okay? So when Moshe saw that nothing could save him, by the way, this verse from Deuteronomy 32 is part of the Tziduk Hadin, part of that prayer we say. And this is at a point in the service where we're covering the grave with earth, or in some communities right after. So the finality of death really sets in once the burial has happened. And that is where Moshe says, the rock, his actions are perfect, as all his ways are justice, a faithful God, there is no injustice, righteous and upright is he. Wow.
Is that, excuse me, Rabbi, is that
Sure.
why we wait until after the burial before we count what's the word, the true time, 30 days?
Well, the period of mourning starts from the time of burial. Well, that's for a different reason. It's because the honor that is due the deceased is before we worry about mourning or comforting those who grieve, we have to take care of the deceased because he or she can't take care of themselves. So that's why that doesn't start until after.
Thank you.
Sure. So now at the end of all this back and forth, and Moshe is nudging and kvetching, and God is saying no, right? But again, Moshe keeps asking over and over, even though God theoretically said enough, don't even talk to me anymore about this. And what happens is that the Holy One, this is the bottom of page 3, blessed be he, began weeping. Who will rise up for me against the wicked? Who will take a stand for me against the evildoers? Right? And then, you have the last, from the very end of the Torah, there is not arisen another prophet in Israel like Moses. And then there are other quotations from Micah, right? The heavens weep. And so here it almost seems that God is constrained by God. And even God is disappointed. Even God is crying over this. Even though, ostensibly, though, it should have been God that could have made the difference. So then my question then is, we'll go on to another story in a moment, what's going on here? Why did the rabbis go through this amplification of no, 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 disappointment, disappointment, Moshe persisting. Does he really think God is going to change his mind? Is one question. Second question, of course, is why God seems to be mourning the inevitable when, right, God is all powerful. And so I'm just curious what you think is going on here. Go ahead, Anita.
To me, it's kind of like adolescence between Moses and a parent, God. He's defying him, he's asking him where will you do it for 10 men? Will you do it for 9 men? Will you, and God has relented so many times. He blurred the line. He didn't say, this is it, like parents do. You do it because I said so. It just sounds like the adolescent mind that we're going through with our grandkids now.
Yeah, but also, even when we say enough, we don't want to hear this anymore, and they start crying and begging and all that, even though we don't change our mind, we do suffer when we see our kids suffering, if the person that you love. And I think we can see that seen through the Tanakh, when in the main relationship with God, when the person is after the heart of God, you see that conversation, argument, and rebellion, and then you see God standing up, and also His mercy and His compassion through His creation.
Okay,
So
yeah.
I think when I read this midrash, I think of our relationship with our parents and with our kids. It is that kind of relationship. Yes, God feels like He's weeping too, because He does love Moshe. He knows what Moshe has done, and he hates to see Moshe crying and begging and
Right.
being so frustrated and so desperate because the inevitable is going to happen, and he's begging for something, and it's not going to be given to him.
Right. And there may be reasons that Moshe could not enter into the land. That has nothing to do with Moshe's worthiness. So, we have to, sometimes God may say no, and sometimes we don't know what God says. But sometimes if God says no, which God said, in this case, God definitely says no, that there may be other things going on that we have no way of ever being aware of. Rabbi Romano?
There's also, we talk about God with so many different names and so many different aspects. And maybe this is a moment that God as Harachaman, as the compassion one, the being of compassion can't override God as Dayan. Or the, there
There's there's a midrash that God has a prayer that may my compassion overcome my strict accountability for justice. Almost, God is praying to God's own self, which is. Go ahead, Lili, and then Anita.
I did not have anything to say.
Oh, okay. I thought you were raising. Anita.
It's hard for me to articulate some things because it's always dirt, but I wanted to say that God sometimes causes things or allows things to happen because we're humans and we get what we deserve or whatever. But it's like when you lost your child.
Oh.
You begged God to show, to bring the child back. I don't know what the child died from or whatever, but it doesn't matter. But we don't know what God's plan was, or we don't understand why he would take a child at that age and so tender and away from the parents. I mean, you don't know his rationale, and we may never know. We may
No.
know when we die, and then again we may not. Nobody's ever come back to tell us. But God finally reveals what he was preventing, maybe something worse happening later on. Who knows?
Well, that's actually a good segue to the next story on page 4, which is a story from Shmuel Bet. So this is after David sins egregiously. He not only commits adultery with Bathsheba, but arranges for her husband, Uriah, to be in the thick of battle where he will certainly be killed. And the reason why it becomes so important for Uriah to die is Bathsheba has become pregnant. And it will become readily clear, since he has been a very devoted soldier of David's, who has not been home and in fact refuses to go home to be with his wife until the Israelites are victorious. So after Uriah dies, there's a very powerful scene where Natan comes and tells David a parable about a rich man with lots of sheep and a poor man with one. And the poor man loved his one sheep and cared for it, and then the rich man came and took it away. And David is incensed and said, "Who is this, son of a gun? I'll give him, what for?" And Natan explodes with the finger in his face. "Atah ha'ish," it is you the man. So he marries Bathsheba, but Natan tells him that he will suffer grievously, which he does in his own family. There is a kind of crime fitting the punishment that just as David essentially dissolved another person's family, his own family will fall apart around him. And this baby, when it's born, dies. Now, David, he puts on sackcloth, he fasts, and when the child dies, right, they're afraid to tell him. They're afraid that he's going to hurt himself. David saw his servants talking in whispers. He understood that the child was dead. David asked his servants, "Is the child dead?" "Yes," they replied. Thereupon David rose from the ground. He bathed and anointed himself. He changed his clothes. He went into the house of God and prostrated himself. Then he went home and asked for food. And of course, his courtiers say, "Why have you acted in this manner? While the child was alive, you fasted and wept, but now you rise and take food?" He said, "When the child was still alive, I fasted and wept because I thought, who knows? God may have pity on me and the child may live. But now that he is dead, why should I fast? Can I bring him back again? I shall go to him, but he will never come back to me." There is a kind of acceptance. There was a hope that God would relent, but in the face of the inevitability of the result, you have to accept.
It's horrible.
Of course it's but as Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who's one of